You sit after prayer, and something feels off. Not guilt, not exactly distraction, just no shift. You said the words. You stood. You bowed. You even meant it, at least part of you did. But when you finish, you're still carrying the same heaviness, the same thoughts come back, the same pull returns. So you sit there for a second longer than usual, and you think, why didn't anything change? You don't say it out loud, but you feel it, because you've been told your whole life that prayer should transform you, that remembrance should soften you, that closeness to Allah should feel different. But what if the problem is not that nothing is happening? What if something very specific is happening, and you just don't have the language for it? Ibn Arabi says this moment, this exact feeling, is not failure, it is a state, a real state, a space between two conditions of the soul. He calls it Barzakh. Barzakh, not just the barrier between life and death, but the invisible boundary between who you were and who you are becoming. And most people don't even realize they're inside it. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly why you feel suspended between two selves, and what it actually takes to cross the hidden Barzakh most people never leave. In this video, we are going to look at 5 very specific things. First, we will look at the subtle daily feeling that shows you are already living inside a hidden Barzakh. Then, we will examine how Ibn Arabi describes this in-between realm inside your own consciousness. Then, we will uncover 3 precise ways your mind keeps you trapped between two realities without you noticing. After that, we will see what Ibn Arabi himself experienced when crossing this state and why most people never do. And finally, we will break down exactly how you begin crossing your own inner Barzakh starting tonight. There is a very specific kind of struggle that defines this generation. It's not that you don't believe, it's not that you don't know, it's that you live with contradiction. You know what is right, but you don't feel aligned with it. You want to change, but something inside you resists at the same time. So you live in this strange tension, half committed, half distracted, half present. Modern psychology has a name for this. It calls it cognitive dissonance, the discomfort of holding two conflicting identities at once. Researchers have found that when the brain cannot resolve this conflict, it doesn't choose, it loops. You overthink, you delay, you hover. But Ibn Arabi looked at this 800 years ago and said, this is not just a mental discomfort, this is a state of being. In Al-Futuhat al-Makkiyah, Al-Futuhat al-Makkiyah, he describes Barzakh as a reality that separates two things, while belonging fully to neither. Not just a barrier, a living interface, a place where opposites meet, but do not merge. And this is where his framework becomes unsettling, because most Islamic content speaks in binaries, right and wrong, halal and haram, obedience and disobedience. But Ibn Arabi asks a deeper question. What happens when you are no longer fully inside either one? What happens when your old self is already weakening, but your new self has not stabilized yet? You don't feel sinful enough to repent deeply. You don't feel pure enough to move forward confidently, so you float. And that floating is not random. Science describes what is happening. Ibn Arabi maps the territory you are trapped inside, and once you see it, you stop blaming yourself, and you start asking a different question. Am I stuck? Or am I suspended? Think of a 24-year-old man. He just left the masjid after Isha He sits in his car, engine off. The quiet hits him. For a moment, everything feels clear. He just listened to a reminder about death, about accountability, about wasted time, and for 3 minutes, he feels it. He imagines waking up consistently, deleting certain apps, becoming someone else. It feels real. Then his phone lights up. He picks it up without thinking, scrolls, one video to 10, and something strange happens. The feeling doesn't disappear completely. It lingers, but it weakens. Just enough for him to ignore it. Half guilt, half relief. He leans back and whispers, "What's wrong with me?" Nothing is wrong with him. He is inside a barzakh, infusus al-hikam fusus, al-hikam. Ibn Arabi writes that the human being is itself a barzakh between the divine and the created, meaning you are built to hold two realities at once. You are capable of turning fully toward Allah and fully toward distraction, and in certain moments, you feel both at the same time. That instability you feel is not weakness, it is structure. It is like standing with one foot on two moving boats. The boats are not stable, so your body cannot stabilize, and then you blame yourself for shaking. Modern psychology calls this self-discrepancy. Researchers have found that when your ideal self and your actual self are both active in your awareness, you experience emotional friction, discomfort, tension, restlessness. But here is the part Ibn Arabi adds. That tension is not a problem to eliminate. It is a space you are standing in. Science describes the discomfort. Ibn Arabi tells you where you are. And here is what most people miss. They feel this tension and immediately try to resolve it. They rush to fix themselves, make promises, set goals, force decisions. They try to jump from one boat to the other too quickly, and they fall because they never learned how to stand in the middle. Have you noticed this? You feel something after a reminder and immediately think, I need to change everything. And then, within days, you collapse back, not because you are weak, because you skipped the Barzakh. You treated a transitional state like a permanent identity. Ask yourself honestly, how many times have you tried to become a different person overnight, and then quietly returned to who you were? That is not failure. That is misunderstanding the structure of transformation. Ibn Arabi is not telling you to rush out of this state. He is telling you to recognize it, because the moment you see it clearly, you stop panicking inside it. And when you stop panicking, you stop reacting blindly. You are not broken, you are stretched between two truths. But if being stretched is natural, why do you keep staying there longer than you should? That is where this gets uncomfortable. Think of a woman in her early 30s. Every Ramadan, she writes the same list. Wake up for tahajjud, stop wasting time online, fix her salah, and every Ramadan. The first few days feel powerful. She wakes up early, feels focused, feels sincere. Then something subtle shifts. She misses one night, then another. By day 5, she is back to her old patterns. But here is the strange part. She does not fully give up. She still thinks about changing, still feels guilty, still says, I need to get back on track. Weeks pass, nothing changes. She is not fully committed, but she is also not fully detached. She is living in between, in al-Futuhat al-Makkiyah, al-Futuhat al-Makkiyah. Ibn Arabi describes Barzakh as a place where forms can appear without consequence. You can experience something without it fully taking effect. You can imagine transformation without becoming it. It is like dreaming. You are running in the dream. It feels real, but your body never moves. Now here is where it gets uncomfortable. You are not stuck despite the Barzakh. You are stuck because of it, because the middle is comfortable. There is no full loss, no full responsibility. You get to feel like someone who wants to change, without becoming someone who actually changed. Modern psychology calls this the avoidance reward loop. Researchers have found that even imagining a goal can release a small sense of reward in the brain, so you feel progress without movement. Ibn Arabi described this same mechanism centuries ago as living among forms that do not actualize. Science describes what is happening. Ibn Arabi tells you what you are doing. You are feeding on the feeling of intention instead of paying the cost of transformation. Ask yourself honestly, how many times have you felt sincere and treated that feeling as if it was enough? How many times have you said, I want to change, and let that sentence replace actual change? This is why you stay in the middle, because the middle gives you something dangerous, the illusion that you are moving. When you are only imagining movement, and over time, that illusion becomes your identity. I'm trying, I'm working on myself, I'm getting there. Years pass, nothing shifts, because you never left the Barzakh. The middle feels safe because nothing is required of you there. But if the middle is safe, why does it also feel so empty? That is what most people never question. Think of a man in his late 20s. Every night before sleeping, he watches Islamic lectures. He listens carefully. He understands everything. He can explain concepts to others, quote scholars, break down ideas. And if you asked him, he would say, I've learned so much this year. And he has, but his life has not changed. His habits are the same. His reactions are the same. His distractions are the same. And deep down, he knows it, but he doesn't feel urgency because he feels informed. This is exactly what Ibn Arabi warns about. In Fuzes al-Hikam, he distinguishes between knowledge that reflects truth and knowledge that transforms the knower. He says there is a type of knowing that belongs to the Barzakh. It shows you reality without moving you into it. It is like a mirror reflecting fire. The image is perfect, but the mirror never burns. Now here is the part most people never consider. Clarity can trap you, because once you understand something clearly, you feel like you have progressed. Modern psychology calls this the cognitive fluency illusion. Researchers found that when information is easy to process and feels clear, people overestimate how deeply they have learned or changed. Ibn Arabi described this centuries earlier. Seeing is not the same as becoming. Science describes the illusion. Ibn Arabi exposes the consequence, and the consequence is this: you replace action with understanding, you replace crossing with observing. Have you felt this? You watch something powerful, you nod, you reflect, you even feel emotional, and then nothing changes the next day. Not because the message was weak, but because you never left the Barzakh of reflection. You stayed in the mirror. Ask yourself honestly, how many insights are you carrying right now that have never been translated into action? How many times have you mistaken emotional impact for actual transformation. This is where most people stop. They think knowledge will eventually accumulate and push them forward. Ibn Arabi says no. Knowledge without embodiment anchors you in the middle because it gives you the feeling of movement without the reality of it. Seeing the path is not the same as walking it. But if knowledge cannot move you, then what actually does? This is where crossing begins to feel like loss. Think of a man who finally decides to remove something from his life, something he knows is wrong, something he has carried. For years, he deletes it, cuts it off, walks away, and for a moment, he expects relief. Instead, he feels empty, quiet, almost disoriented. He sits there thinking, I thought this would feel better, and because it doesn't, he starts questioning the decision. Maybe it wasn't that bad. Maybe I overreacted. Maybe I can go back just a little. This moment is critical, because this is the edge of the Barzakh in Al-Futuhat al-Makkiyah. Ibn Arabi explains that every transformation requires the annihilation of a previous form. You cannot become something new while still holding on to the structure of what you were. Something has to die, not physically, but internally. A pattern, a habit, an identity. And when it dies, it leaves space. That space feels like loss, because your nafs was attached to what was removed, so it interprets absence as deprivation. But Ibn Arabi reframes this completely. He says this emptiness is not regression. It is transition. It is the space between one form dissolving and another not yet appearing, like a snake shedding its skin. For a moment, it is exposed, vulnerable, unprotected. But that exposure is not weakness, it is necessary. Now here is the moment most people fail. They feel that emptiness and immediately try to fill it with something else, another distraction, another habit, another substitute. They escape the discomfort, and in doing so, they step back into the Barzakh. They never complete the crossing. Ask yourself, honestly, when was the last time you removed something and actually sat with the emptiness it created, without replacing it, without escaping it, without explaining it away? That emptiness you fear is not a void, it is a doorway. The feeling of loss is often the sign you are finally crossing. But if crossing requires loss, why would anyone choose it? That question leads to the deepest part of this entire discussion. Here is what almost no one tells you about this entire process. Barzakh is not your enemy. It is necessary without it. You cannot transform. Ibn Arabi goes even further. He suggests that existence itself is a form of Barzakh, a meeting point between being and non-being, which means your confusion, your hesitation, your instability is not a mistake, it is a stage, a real stage of becoming. But here is where it turns. Barzakh is meant to be crossed, not inhabited, and most people quietly build a life inside it. They adopt language that sounds like movement. I'm trying, I'm working on myself, I'm in progress. But if you look closely, nothing actually changes. Years pass, the same patterns, the same cycles, the same identity, because they became comfortable in the middle. This is the paradox. The very place that allows transformation is also the place that prevents it if you stay too long. Ibn Arabi's warning is subtle but severe. If you do not choose to cross, the Barzakh will slowly become your home. And the most dangerous part, you will not feel stuck. You will feel active, engaged, reflective, aware, but nothing will move. Ask yourself honestly, how long have you been working on yourself without a clear before and after? How long have you been in motion without actually arriving anywhere? That is not growth. That is suspension. The place that prepares you to change can also become the place you never leave. So the question is no longer, am I in a box? The real question is, am I willing to cross it? So how do you actually move? Not in theory, not emotionally, but in reality. There are three very specific things you can do. The first is what we can call the cut one bridge rule. Look at your life right now. There is at least one behavior that keeps you in between. Not fully committed, not fully detached. Pick one, remove it completely. Not reduce it, not manage it, cut it. This collapses your dual identity. It forces your system to choose. The second practice, act before you feel ready. This goes directly against how you usually operate. You wait until you feel motivated, until you feel clear, until it makes sense. But that waiting is the Barzakh. Instead, act first. Move your body, change the behavior, let the feeling follow, because identity is not built by thought. It is built by repeated action. The third practice, sit inside the emptiness. When you remove something, do not replace it immediately. Let the silence expand. Let the discomfort exist. Let the absence speak, because that space is where the new form begins to take shape. Most people rush this. They escape too early, and in doing so, they never complete the crossing. So tonight, before you sleep, ask yourself three questions. What am I still holding on to that keeps me in between? What action have I been delaying, waiting to feel ready for? And what emptiness have I been avoiding? Your answers to these questions are not abstract. They are the exact location of your Barzakh. Go back to that moment. You finished your prayer, and nothing felt different before this conversation. You would have seen that as failure, as distance, as weakness. Now you see it differently. That was not emptiness. That was the edge. You were standing between two states, between who you have been and who you are being called to become. And for a moment, you felt both. That discomfort you wanted to escape was actually the doorway. And now you understand something most people never realize. You can live in that doorway for years, thinking you are moving, thinking you are trying, thinking you are progressing, or you can step through it, but stepping through it will cost you comfort, familiarity, identity. So here is the question you need to sit with honestly. The last time you felt that emptiness after worship, what part of your old self were you refusing to leave behind? Comment that, not what you felt, what you were still holding on to. Most people don't lose their way. They just never leave the middle.